Welcome to the Grit and Grace podcast, hosted by Tonya Bruton, a faith-filled journey where we celebrate the resilience of the human spirit intertwined with the grace of God. Here we delve into recovery stories, mental health, relationships, and deep dives into scripture, chapter by chapter and verse by verse. Our mission is clear: to encourage and inspire, equip the saints, and above all, glorify God through testimonies, Bible studies, interviews, and more. Broadcasting from the heart of Truth Seeker Texas Radio in Decatur, Texas. Catch new episodes every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, with daily replays at 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on www.truthseekertexasradio.com. YouTube and Spotify and other major platforms are uploaded on Thursdays. Get ready to be uplifted and empowered. And now, join us for today's episode of the Grit and Grace podcast. Hi, and welcome back to the Grit and Grace podcast. This is Tonya from Texas, and I'm so glad that you're here listening today. And I am so glad and just excited to bring on a returning guest from last season, Miss Jaclyn Whitt. And she is, just let me briefly introduce her. She is the co-director of Family Friendly Screenwriting Academy. She is a Canadian screenwriter, and you'll notice, Jaclyn, this is from your website, princessofyall.com, and we'll repeat that later. But she's a Canadian screenwriter with a love for Jesus. She's garnered 36 screenwriting awards. Her portfolio includes a variety of genres, including comedies, dramas. I love dramas. Faith-based and based on a true story. Her two big announcements for 2024 are the launch of the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast, which I'm excited to hear more about, with her husband, Jaclyn Whitt. So, Jaclyn, welcome to back to the show, and just go ahead and tell us a little more about yourself. Elaborate on that. What do you guys do for fun? I mean, what all do you guys got going on?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure I probably mentioned in the previous podcast that my husband and I moved to Mexico so that we could build our business.
I see.
So it's funny whenever, something happens, like we reach a milestone or something, we're like, oh, we should celebrate. And so then we just joke, let's go to Mexico.
And
we
you
live
did.
here now.
Yeah, wow.
Most of the time we live here. Yeah. And so we do have the podcast, but there's actually like a whole lot going on since the last time I spoke with you. When I spoke with you last, it's like everything was just kind of getting started with our business. Mm-hmm. And, which is partly why I wanted to go on podcast, kind of help spread the word and stuff. But it's totally taken off since then. So we actually changed the name. Thank you for reminding me. I need to update my my website. But we changed the name from Family Friendly Screenwriting to Faith and Family Screenwriting Academy and Faith and Family Filmmakers Association. And the reason we did that is because we wanted to get more specific with, who we serve and what we do. And so our whole goal is to actually provide opportunities for people that are called to the film industry to serve God or to glorify God with their talents. We wanted to kind of bust the myth that it's just for other people, because it seems like a lot of people have that idea that the film industry is something that is just like this wonder that like you can't break into it, or it's impossible, or only certain people are successful, and that's just not the case. But if you don't even know where to begin, then you're kind of lost, right? So we kind of we create that path. We help people get where they need to go and learn what they need to learn so that they can serve God with what God's put inside of them.
Well, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's always been, I have two purposes for this show. It's to encourage, inspire others, and to glorify God, which I don't know why I say them in that order. But because glorifying God is always first and foremost. But to glorify God and in our talents with whatever He's put in us. And I know a lot of people in my circle of friends and influence that are writers, and I that may be looking to, get into that industry, but they don't know where to start. I noticed you also have some conferences coming up as well that you're going to be speaking at
Yeah.
on
Oh,
kind of,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, what's been really cool is actually as we've been making connections and I've been letting people know, yeah, I have classes, I have workshops, and so I teach screenwriting. Then I've been invited to some festivals to teach at them and do workshops, which is really cool. Like festivals, definitely for anybody that is listening, that is like, okay, what is my first step? If you can find a Christian film festival near you to attend, that is going to launch you faster than anything because you will get to meet people who are already working in the film industry who have that heart, and you're going to connect with like-minded people right away. And as soon as you can connect with people that have that same skill set or a complementary skill set, and that same heart to serve God with it, then you're able to actually start working on projects and working toward actually fulfilling what's in you to do. And yeah, festivals are one of the best ways to do that. And so as I've been going to these different festivals and conferences and teaching, I've really been able to help people to strengthen their screenplays. So, for example, I've had some students that have come to me and said, like, I've been writing for years. I can't get any traction with my scripts. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I'm like, okay, let me take a look at it. So then I give them some feedback on it. I help them to understand these are the areas that your script is not strong, and this is how you can strengthen it. And so from there, they've actually gone on to start winning awards, which is the first step to getting in front of a producer. Most of the time it's the first step, and the reason why it's the first step is because you need to kind of have something like a stamp saying, hey, this one is good. And then you take
right,
that to a producer. Yeah.
right, right. I mean, and so networking is important.
Super important.
Yeah, of course, a good script is important. So, do you have to be, let's just say, do you have, well, let's get to the writing process, I
Mhm.
guess. Um, you know, um, I know a lot of people that journal or want to write their story, you have done based on true stories. So they're wanting to write their story, or maybe they have written their story, but they need to get it into the screenwriting format. And so is there do you help people with that process of getting
Mhm.
it from just a raw um raw document into like
Oh yeah.
dialogue
Yeah.
and scenes and things like that? Like, how do you help
Yes,
people with that?
absolutely. Absolutely. So there are a few options. I do have a screenwriting foundations class that I've run it on occasion. I'm actually planning to do like a recording of it so that people can just access it whenever they want and not have to wait for me to run the course. But basically, what that does is break down the step by step um, of how to structure the screenplay, because a movie is different from a book in some very specific ways. And the two main ways is it looks very different on the page. But the other way is that you have to tell a journey keeping timing in mind. Because with a book, people are going to read it, put it down, read it, put it down, and so you're just thinking, making sure that your chapters are going to have what they need per chapter, and that you've got your cliffhanger if that's the way that that book works, and moving on. And but you understand that your audience is going to set it down and pick it up and set it down and pick it up. Whereas with a movie, you do not want them to walk away from it, right?
Right.
Everything has to keep moving, and you're taking an audience on an emotional journey. So the only way to have an emotional journey that an audience is going to stick around for it, you have to be very mindful of where you're taking them, and you can't just jump from one emotion to the next. There has to be like a flow into it. And so there's a little bit more involved with that. So pacing is super important, and the length. That's the other
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I never thought it. Yeah, I never thought
Yeah.
about those things. Yeah, so there is a lot that goes into it, um,
Mhm.
for sure. So,
And I,
s-
I do offer like one-to-one sessions so that if people want to just have like a consultation and be like, okay, is this story worth telling in a movie? Is it something that would be able to go forward? And then, what are my next steps or whatever? Then I can help them with whatever stage they're at.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so we know once you've got a solid script, I would say it's good to always have someone put eyes on it. And then, like you say, there's courses available. There's getting to a festival, start networking, getting other people to give you feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That feedback is important.
It's huge. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then definitely, once you get that feedback, you can start networking and start putting yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great that you offer all that to, to help out. So tell me a little bit though about, you have a book that's coming out, right? Or
Yeah.
is it out now? I know it was soon. I think
It
this is
is
the 23rd. So it'll be,
July 23rd. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody who is interested in writing, and even if you're not, this book actually is a total mesh of understanding what it takes to write a screenplay, how to build characters, how to take them on a character's journey, like have a character arc. It goes through all of that, but it also at the same time parallels it to our own journey with God as our author. So even if you just like, if you're not a writer, you're not into, the performing arts or anything, but you want to be able to get like a new angle on understanding how to have a relationship with God, like this is that.
Right, right, and it is called, the name of it again is a little lengthy. In the beginning, middle, and end, a screenwriter's observation of life, character, and God. Is that right?
Correct.
That's
Yes,
correct.
correct.
And then it'll be on Amazon, available on Amazon. By the time this comes out, it
Yes.
will definitely be available on Amazon. Um, so how was that writing that book? I mean, I know that's a congratulations. I mean,
Thank you.
that's definitely a great accomplishment on your end.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
How did you feel about that? And how hard was that to get done?
that's a really good question. Okay, because for a long time, authors would come to me and be like amazed, "Oh, you write movies." And I would be amazed at authors like you write books. Like that's such a large project. Like for me, writing a movie, maybe because I've done it already so many times, but like it's shorter. Like so for me, I feel like there's a lot less that I have to worry about, like once I understand how to, structure and do all that stuff, like there's a lot less words. So writing a book, I was fairly intimidated, I'll be honest. And I didn't really know where to start. And did people kept saying you should write a book, you should write a book. And I thought, like, what do I have to say? You know? But then ideas started coming to me and I just started taking notes. And then after a while, I had like ideas come to me, not just as, oh, I could write about this, like a concept, just a couple words. It was more like, I actually understand how to flesh that out right now. And so then I would go and I would write maybe like a page or so. So in the beginning, it really was like that, where I was just keeping track of my ideas. And then I got to a point where I felt like I had enough ideas. I was ready to sit down and flesh them all out. And that's kind of how I did it. And so the book actually, there's 15 chapters, and each chapter has its own subject that gets into for like, these are things about storytelling and these elements. And so then I get into what it takes as a writer to write that element, but then I equate that to, okay, so this is what God is doing in our lives. So when you notice this happening, pay attention. So, for example, as the writer, I cannot sit down and have a conversation with my characters. I can't. It's impossible, right? They exist within me and they exist because of me. And I am fully involved in their lives, but I am outside of it because
Right,
I'm a different entity altogether, right?
right. Yeah.
Um, and so in order for me to communicate with my main character, I have to send other characters to go talk to them. or I have to upset something in their life in order to get them to do something differently. So the way that I communicate with my characters is I find a lot of the same ways that God communicates with us. And if we recognize that,
Oh,
it
that's
puts us
good.
in a different position to be able to respond to it.
I'm understanding that. Yeah, I just got that's so good. And if just that little nugget there is good, I can imagine the rest of the book. Because I was going to ask you, yeah, what can people uh get out of the book spiritually speaking, you know?
Hmm.
And that's really good because the way you equated that with how you speak to your characters, I understood that you use another character to come in
Hmm.
and like you say, disrupt the situation, or
Yeah.
if that's what's necessary, to get that person's
Yeah.
attention or whatever. And I can definitely equate that with how God works in our lives.
Yeah.
And and how he's telling the story of our life, you know, and what we can learn from that when we recognize that that's what's happening.
Hmm. Hmm. And, one of the other things that I have found from the people that I've let read it beforehand, they've found a lot of comfort in the chapter that talks about endings and recognizing that God reverse engineers our story, same way that a writer does. I always know the ending before I write, you know, and
Really?
in
Okay.
order to yeah, and so the thing is that there is a test coming, right? When I'm writing my stories, I know that my main character is going to end up facing this test in the end, right? The climax where they're going to either succeed or fail, right? And they've got
Right.
their character arc hanging in the balance. Like there's this moment where it's very weighty. I know that moment before I start. And everything that leads up to that moment is me preparing them for that moment. So
That is
all of
so
the
good.
turmoil they go through, like
That is
they
so
don't know
good.
it's coming. Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
They
but
don't
you
know
but
that
you
that moment's
know,
coming. I do.
but you
And
know.
exactly. And I know what it's going to take to get them ready for that moment so that they can be successful.
And those moments can be scary. Those moments, like a movie. I'm thinking of a movie, but I'm also thinking about our lives. That moment, those moments can be scary. They can be dramatic. They could be, well,
Hmm.
they might be funny. We don't
Yeah.
we don't we don't know. But God knows. And if we can, and we have to take comfort in that, that we're not just spinning out here on this ball
Yeah.
with random things happening to us. God, there's a God out there that is authoring our story,
Hmm.
and he is the beginning, he is the end, and he knows the beginning and he knows the end.
Yeah.
And so what a powerful way, and what an interesting way, though, that you've weaved the two together. What
Hmm.
you do for a living, your talent,
Yeah.
writing, helping others with that, and then our relationship with God. I mean, I feel like only God could have given that to
Yeah.
you, that gift to you,
And
and you're
that's how
sharing
I
that with
teach.
others. Yeah.
Yeah, and even when I teach screenwriting, especially if I get to a point where either I'm struggling to figure out how to explain it or if somebody's struggling to understand it, I take it out of the screenwriting world and I put it in the spiritual realm. And so then I can talk about it from that perspective until they understand it. And then I put it back into screenwriting. And so I do it both ways all the time. For me, there's just so much connection. So even when I'm teaching at festivals, I'm bringing in this spiritual element all the time because why not learn from the best storyteller ever?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Amen. Amen. Um, so yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you too, like, what what motivated you? I mean, to write the book. I mean, as far I know you want to help others with writing, but I mean, spiritually speaking, did you share parts of your own walk?
Yeah,
In
actually,
the book? Yeah.
that's perfect. The thing is that God has given me so many testimonies. Like I've had a pretty wild walk with him. And I think that he did that with me because he wanted to give me stories to tell. And also because I am very much the type of person that I will testify. If he's going to heal me, I'm telling everyone. If he's going to,
Yes.
give me any kind of divine encounter or whatever, I'm telling everyone. And
Yes.
so this book does definitely include a lot of my personal stories. I actually get very vulnerable in it. I share my testimony, my conversion, and so yeah, and I feel like the three are combined, and that's kind of where the feedback that I've gotten from the people who've read it already. Like each person gets something different out of it because some people are drawn to the lessons that they can learn about writing, and so they're inspired to go back to their projects and write. And then other people are inspired, with their walk with the Lord and understanding how to recognize him as your author and how to look at life differently and circumstances differently. And then other people are, diving into it. It's not quite a memoir, but there definitely are stories of my own personal life in there, where they're just really enjoying the testimonies. And so yeah, there's the combination of all of them. And you were asking like, why did I write the book? And I think part of it is that over the years, I had so many stories, so many testimonies of things that God has done that I didn't even get to share all of them with everyone, like, because there's only so many people and I don't want to take up all the testimony time at church, right? Because usually
Yeah.
when they ask, like, does anybody have a testimony? I'm looking around like, okay, because I don't want to go first because I don't want to take up the whole time. But if nobody else is gonna go, like, I'll go.
I'll
I've
go.
always got something. And so I thought like this would be a great way to compile not all of them, but several of them, the ones that were relevant to whatever I was teaching at the time in the book. And so yeah, it for people that are writers, they can pull that and understand, okay, God told a story this way. And because the other thing is, especially new writers, we don't want to be too hard on our characters, right? We don't want to put them in a position where it's like, oh, but that's going to be painful for them. Like we're coddling them. And what you have to do as a writer is to break out of that and understand in movies, we're dealing with stubborn characters, right? They don't want to learn. And so we have to figure out how do we make this stubborn character learn? And so that's where the obstacles come in and, sending people into their lives so that they can be told new things and, all of that. But what we realize in that process is God does the same with us. He is not going to coddle us, right? He knows this thing is coming, this test or whatever. And there's going to be multiple times that we have stuff like that in our lives. And so he's going to get us ready. Come hell or high water, he is working on us, right?
Oh,
Doesn't
oh
matter how
gosh.
stubborn we are.
No, and
So, yeah.
I am stubborn. That's when you were saying that, I'm like, okay, that's me. But I also relate to like having a lot of stories. I mean, that well, and a lot of testimonies of what God has brought me through or brought me out of or healed us from or and as you said, I'm always one to tell it. My issue is and I think a lot of people have this issue is just getting started,
Mhm.
focusing on, there's such a plethora of things of different testimonies that, you want to stay focused on one area. But, I mean, I know if I stick with it, you know what I mean? God will push me in that
Mhm.
he'll help me with it. If he's pushing me in
Yeah.
that direction to write, which I've felt like forever that he has, I work a little bit on it at a time.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
but I like what you said too about not being too harsh on your character. So if my character is my character,
Yeah.
I can tend to be harsh on me. So that's something I have to like work on myself. But I'm not in everyday life, but if
Right.
I, but when I'm sitting down having to like really, when you're writing, you're thinking about it. So,
Mhm.
you know, But God is good. I'm excited. That sounds like a wonderful book. And I encourage everybody listening to make sure you get a copy of that. So what about though the podcast? I'm a little jelly of you because you got your husband working with you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm always fighting to get, I mean, well, my husband's been on mine a few times. It's just he's got so much honeydew projects to go
Right. Yeah.
to do when he's not working that it's hard for me to get him on. But that must be great working with your husband on that. And just tell us a little bit what's the name of the podcast,
Mhm.
and I know that they can get to it through your website, but it looks like it's available on all platforms. But just go ahead and let's get into that.
Yeah, it's called Faith and Family Filmmakers Podcast. So basically, what we wanted to do was to create an opportunity where the people who have the knowledge and experience and would love to be able to share it with others, we want to give them a platform to do that. And so a lot of our guests are already successful in the industry. They've been working a long time in their field. We do sometimes interview newer people because it's always fun to hear their stories and see like, oh yeah, that was what that person learns in the beginning and stuff like that. So people say that when they listen to our podcast, they take notes because there's just so much amazing stuff. But what we do is we interview and serve the people who are in the film industry who have a Christian worldview.
Okay.
So that's what our whole goal is to
There are people, I mean, I'd like,
yeah,
there are people in the industry that with a,
absolutely.
you know, a lot of good things are coming out lately. So, we I know for years, in the church, we fought TV and movies all together at first, back in my day,
Yeah.
or my granny's day,
Yeah.
and then we've just been fighting for a long time to get our stuff out there, or to get, faith-based
Hmm.
movies and shows and things like that out there. So, but there are people doing that, and you guys are
Yeah.
featuring them, and they're helping other people,
Oh
bringing
yeah.
other people in. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah. So we get to interview, we do two interviews with everyone. So the first one is kind of getting to know them, getting to know what their journey is, how they got where they're at. And there's usually testimonies along the way. And then the second interview is them sharing things that they've learned that other people can glean from. So it could fall into the category of educational. Um, it could also fall into entertainment. So, even if you're not in the film industry, it kind of is cool to get an insider's understanding because even if the second interview, maybe you don't care so much about that, but you want to hear the journeys and get to know like how did this person get into this industry? Like how did they get into acting or how did they get into writing or producing? So yeah, it's cool. Like we've got some pretty big names now for our second season. Like we've got Stephen Kendrick, which if you've seen any of the Kendrick movies, he's one of the writers, producers of those. So that would be like War Room, Courageous. They've got one coming out now called The Forge. And yeah, so there's them. We've got Mark Christopher Lawrence. You've seen him in all kinds of stuff. He was Big Mike in Chuck, if you ever
Okay.
watched that TV show. Yeah, and just other actors. We've got an actor from The Chosen. We've got lots of,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
all different kinds. Festival
Yeah.
directors and yeah. So it's a
Yeah.
great way to get connected, right? Like to
Uh-huh.
get to know who everybody is in the industry because I think a lot of the time from the outside looking in, you only see the actors. You don't realize who all is bringing it together because film is very much a collaborative effort. And so then if you want to understand like, well, what about the people who are on the other side of the camera? Who are they? How did they get to do what they're doing? Because they're the ones bringing it all together. I mean, the actors are amazing, but even they will tell you like without that director or without that cinematographer or, like take your pick, like all of everybody is coming together to make this movie happen.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, that's awesome. So, I mean, I'm just excited for you. You've got so much going on with the book, with the podcast, with your teaching and your conferences. You sound very busy, but good busy.
Yes.
So
I would say
that's
productive.
productive. Yes,
Yes.
I was gonna use that word, productive. Um, and that's good. I mean, it's great that you're doing great things for the Lord and that you're living out your purpose. I'm excited for you.
Mm.
Do you have any final things that you want that I haven't brought up, Jaclyn, that you want to share today?
Um, it's funny, just as you were just talking now, something popped into my mind, so I'm gonna go ahead and share it.
Okay.
The whole thing of like being productive and stuff, I know it can, especially if you feel like you're called to something, it can feel like, oh, I should be there, I should be doing that and whatever. And maybe at some point you should be, but keep in mind every step of the process is valid and necessary. So even that beginning stage of just finding your way and finding your people and finding the resources, even that step is valid, right? Every
Right.
step of the process is valid. And so, walk it with the Lord, knowing that he's going to get you where he's calling you to be. But don't be anxious and feeling like, oh, I should be further along. Just keep working, and as long as you know each day you're doing what God is asking you to do that day, you're good.
Oh, that's good, Jaclyn. That's good. Each, you know, it's a recovery saying too to live one day at a time. But I mean, give us this day our daily bread. It's important that we focus, not get overwhelmed with what I
Mhm.
haven't got done yet or what needs to be done. But as long as you're getting something done that day, whatever it
Mhm.
be,
Yeah.
whatever you're called to do for the Lord. So that's good. I appreciate you
Yeah.
sharing that. I appreciate you sharing that. Well, you guys, we're gonna get ready to close out for today. It's been a great talk. I just want to remind everybody to um, follow uh, the Grit and Grace podcast Facebook page. That is where I put most of I put all of the updates on the Facebook page. But I know some of you guys are watching on YouTube, so you'll see links and things like that go across the screen. But if you're listening on Spotify and you want to make sure that you can get a hold of Jaclyn and you might not have taken notes, all of those things are going to be available on the Facebook page for the Grit and Grace podcast. So y'all make sure to follow that. And you can reach her through there as well. Um, all right. So it's been wonderful talking with you, Jaclyn. Just stay on and for a few minutes and we'll chat again. This is Tonya with the Grit and Grace podcast. I just want to ask you to continue to pray for me as I pray for you and just be blessed in Jesus' name. Bye bye. Thank you for watching the Grit and Grace podcast. Don't forget to follow me on social media on Facebook at the Grit and Grace podcast, TikTok, and Instagram. I've always provide all my updates on my social platforms, and I look forward to seeing you there. Again, be blessed in Jesus' name and pray for me as I continue to pray for you. Thanks again for watching the Grit and Grace podcast. Bye bye.